No, I guess I'm not. I don't have major concerns with whitewashing right now. There are. What I have a concern with is yes, they are putting more minorities in um, major roles. They are putting them in more background roles, extras. Like they're flooding it. As so much so to where
It's
when you watch The
obnoxious.
Witcher,
Right.
where that's set in like 1400s or 14th century Norway.
There's a prominent black person in the community.
There's like 8 of them.
That's probably culturally
And it's just like
incorrect.
I doubt they were there, but
Wait, are you talking about like The Witcher, like the fantasy show?
yes,
Also, is that
it's
really?
based on books. It's based on books. Then had a video game based
Yeah.
on that, and then had a TV show based on the video game that's based on the books. But there were like in the video game, it's like no black people.
So,
I mean, in the books, like it's pretty much like you're in Norway.
but that's,
So-
that's a fantasy setting, though.
Once you
But
okay,
if the fantasy setting
is
is in Norway,
all right. Well, the guy who
It's not really Norway.
who had the fantasy, he's white, and he fantasized about white people.
okay,
Like,
I don't want to talk about what white men are fantasizing about in here at all.
yeah, but I understand that. There's like Bridgerton is a show that was new to Netflix. I believe it's called Bridgerton. It's a show that's new to Netflix where essentially there's this it's set in like 17th century, something like that, 16th century or whatever, England, something like that. Anyway,
There
there's
are
a
black people then.
black male character who is like the lead character guy basically, and his family is super well off, and it's like he's
In the 1600s in England.
I'm just not sure it's not England, but it's a very white country.
European country.
Yes, and
That's probably
But,
a rare thing.
yes, it would be super rare, and it's kind of this whole thing about he's like sleeping with the lower class white women, and that's kind of what I've heard about the show, almost what it revolves around. My wife, she's
So is it
She's-
racism, classism, infidelity, pornography?
man, it's
What are
all
you
kind
watching?
of
What are you
it's all
watching?
kind of. I didn't watch it.
I
I watched Murder She Wrote. I didn't watch. My wife.
Murder, She
My
Wrote.
wife tried to watch it. She tried to watch it. She said she couldn't get because it was just too much sex. Just too much sex in it. It was just overtly sexual. And so,
Yeah, that happens.
but that was another situation where, like I said, it's to me it's
Overcorrection.
seeming like it's overcorrection. And as a black person, I'm not 1,000% against overcorrection, but I think it's okay to say, hey, like that's what that is.
Too much.
And the reason I'm not against it is because you had so long of things being where you literally would have white people dressed up as Asians or black people or whomever, and they are full on stereotype acting, and it's like
Black
not
man.
only are we taking roles away, but we were insulting these cultures, and now we're getting to the point of okay, well, we greatly decrease insulting the cultures, and now we're giving roles in abundance.
That are-
And it's opportunities that people should have already had. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like let's try to make up by going overboard. And I understand that, but at the same time, sometimes it pulls me out of the what do they call it? Like essentially the reality of the show to me. Like it takes me out of the show
Yeah.
because
You're
when I-
fixated on that.
when I see like I'm someone who
Your suspension of disbelief.
thank you. But it's like when you like you could be watching a fantasy, i.e., Superman movie. You be watching a Superman movie, and he's flying around, freezing people with his ice breath or lasering people
We're accepting
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then soon as Superman
Get shot.
snap somebody's neck or shoot someone or something, it's like Superman would never do that. But it's like he would. Like he doesn't exist to do any of these things.
Or he had like an advertisement for Coca-Cola, or he's just
Yeah,
like,
It flies right in front of the sign.
and it's like, oh yeah, Superman really loves his Coca-Cola every morning. Something like that. Be like, what the heck?
And so yeah, that's all it is for me. It's not a major issue outside of that.
I mean, I do think, all right, to generalize
Mhm.
a viewpoint, from me, you're not going to get an argument because I do think there's an overcorrection.
Mhm.
But I do think that there should be a correction because for so long there were not African Americans in regular TV roles, etc. You know, with the exclusion of the Cosbys growing up, I don't really, or Good Times, or a couple of those shows, the Jeffersons, which was blended. But even that show, in context, you know, moving on up, you know, like he had to work himself out, you know, there weren't many appropriately culturally diverse, I guess, shows or all African American, whatever. So a overcorrection, you know, I'm fine with a correction. I don't know that I watch TV and count, you know, the black characters like we mentioned last week. I do watch the advertising because that's where the money comes from.
Yeah.
And you know, Tide might sponsor a show that is predominantly African American, but they don't put an African American in their commercial.
Yeah.
That to me, that's where I get squirrely. But that's what I'm watching for. More of like the sociological construct. You know, I don't watch a lot of program television. Mostly aliens and Bigfoot, educational stuff. Science Channel, History Channel, Travel Channel, things like that. But so I don't watch that to have enough context. But I get lost when if it is a show and then in the advertising, it's all, you know, aging middle class or middle aged white people, but it's a show that involves a black culture. That's where I get kind of confused about the advertising.
Is there a bit of irony as well is that the show's context recently with mostly black characters that racism generally tends to be an underlying theme of the show.
Oh yeah.
Let's thinking about like Lovecraft Country, which is a show that came out last year.
Yeah.
That it was about these giant supernatural monsters, but the real monster seemed to be racism, which was more apparent and scary throughout the show than any of the actual monsters.
Yeah, but and that's the thing of that you bring up Lovecraft Country. That was the thing about that is that the monsters actually essentially embodied the racism, and then of course in the end they were able to turn it on its head, or of course reverse racism. The way that the way that they manipulated things throughout the course of that show to show all sides of everything was just beautiful. I.e. like the people who could essentially change their body, you know, and could live a life of a white person or a black person at will, essentially almost, and to show that juxtapose. I think all those things. Number one, the premise of that show was to take Lovecraft Country and to flip that on its head, because that was a writer who wrote racist books. And to say, okay, well, from now on, people will look at this name, and when they look at this name, they will think of this show that's about black people and their overcomings of racism, rather than think about the racism of this writer, which I thought was beautiful in itself, let alone the different concepts throughout the show. And those are things I applaud greatly. Those are things that I think are beautiful. I'm someone who's more into the art of shows, and of course movies. And I look at the art of it, the cinematography, like how things work through, and that's why I notice the black people, how many there are, things like that, because when it'll stand out to me when it seems out of place, because I'm someone who recognizes that even though your casual watcher will just enjoy a show, I am looking at the show and I'm wondering, okay, why did they cast that specific person? You know, why did they pan to the side of this person rather than just cut and drop it back in? Like, what made them choose that camera shot? Those things constantly go through my mind. And so when I see this black person here, I'm wondering, what is their role? Because I hadn't seen any, and all of a sudden you have this person in the back. Well, do they have a legitimate role? And what's really crazy is that 9 times out of 10, when you see someone who seems miscast almost or out of place, it's because they have lines. It's because they do actually have a part in it. So they're going to pull them to the forefront. They start them off seeming as if they're extra, and then they slowly work them into the main story.
Right. The guy in the crowd, they keep kind of focusing in on later. Turns out he's the arsonist. Or
Of course.
Right. A little foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
You think much more deeply about movies and television than I do.
Yes.
I'm seeking, what was the phrase?
Suspension of disbelief.
Whenever I watch a movie, I want to just be enwrapped in it, and I try not to analyze it.
But wouldn't you say that a lot of the movies and shows and things that are popular are reflective of what people are wanting? I mean, the stuff that gets popular does reflect what people are seeking.
Well, I think that the success of
The show that we just talked about.
movie, Black Panther. Black Panther, and that gentleman died too, didn't he? Have cancer. What was his name?
Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman. Yes.
And he did a fantastic job in that movie.
Yeah, and I didn't know his whole story, that he was fighting cancer the whole time, and
Yeah.
I mean, kept working. That is an amazing testimony.
Yes, it is.
But the worldwide success of that movie, one of the first, maybe not the first, but one of the major production black superhero, was embraced by the world, is reflective of the desire to take that in. And I would agree with that. I would say that, because if it was a worldwide, bestseller and all the money it made, it wasn't just the black community that embraced it. It was every community, right? So even in white communities or other races, they wanted that as well, and I think that was appropriately done. I have not seen the movie, so I probably shouldn't comment on it, but I haven't seen a lot of movies. It's not a thing. I just don't watch a lot of movies. But the culture played into it, is from the part I understand, it was a black culture, so his character naturally would be black, and
Yeah, well, I would say
he was
African.
Right, African
Culture.
Yeah.
And there is a difference.
Well, I'm sorry.
Black and African culture. But, yeah.
Stupid white man said.
Well, normally when people, I say there's a difference because, of course, people in Africa are black as well, but they have, their black culture is actually different there as well. There's multiple subcultures, of course, within any community. But the reason I just pointed that out is because normally when you say black culture, people think of American black culture. So I did want to differentiate that.
African.
And that became a thing, though.
Yeah.
As in where, yes, there were many of white people who wanted to go see the movie, who did see the movie and support the movie. You don't have anything in America be successful without that when you only have 13% black people in America.
But it's kind of like,
But
Black Panther was worldwide successful, where
yes,
what was Samuel L. Jackson played the old 70s, was it
Shaft.
Shaft. That was not worldwide successful.
no, that was not a good movie.
It was okay.
Yeah.
I like Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Anything. I mean,
The
he's awesome.
last like black superhero that I can think of, which I don't know if it counts as Blade. Like, would you count Wesley Snipes' Blade as a superhero?
Those were pretty
Blade
good.
is superhero.
Yeah.
Marvel and everything.
And
He's half vampire or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was Spawn.
Spawn.
Black? Yeah.
Spawn, yes.
Which
But
there's
Spawn,
Spawn, wait a minute.
Spawn doesn't truly.
The white guy was Spawn,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know enough about him. Yeah.
No.
What movie am I thinking about?
No,
Spawn is with the
Michael
thing-
J. White, black man, he played Spawn in the Spawn movie.
Yeah.
What's the one where the black thing gets inside? Venom.
Venom?
Venom. Is what I was
Okay,
thinking.
that's
I'm
what
sorry.
I'm
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of white guys in
Yeah, there's a lot of white people. I didn't know what y'all. I haven't seen that.
So yeah, I just find it interesting that before Black Panther, most of the black superheroes that come to mind are anti-heroes. Like they're heroes that do morally questionable things.
Well,
Like
and
Blade.
that would be the
Like
same
Blade.
thing with Blade,
Yeah.
along that line. But also, especially for Marvel, when you had prior to this whole resurgence of the Marvel movies and things like that, X-Men with everything, and Wolverine was the number one hero in the world. I mean, it was Superman, Batman, Wolverine, and he's definitely anti-hero.
Yeah.
He is the embodiment of what anti-hero is, and it's still
Well, isn't that
had
the-
great success though.
Well, the old adage that the bad boy turned good. I mean, that's kind of what people drift to.
Yeah, but
does it
the
create
point that he was making almost really pointed to the idea of they only wanted to portray black superheroes as anti-heroes.
I got you.
If you're going to be a hero, you had to be bad.
A bad.
In a sense, yeah,
bad
you had
guy.
to you had to be questionable. We had to still keep an eye on you over there, and
I love that girl.
that would be greatly and I've never actually thought about it from that perspective, but I could definitely see that. Just as examples of white heroes who
or morally
who were also questionable as well.
Yeah.
But never wore the face. And I think that kind of leads to the idea of
Deadpool.
what took place recently with the show Falcon and Winter Soldier, where Falcon goes on to become Captain America, and that show had a lot of it talked a lot about racism and dealt with racism, and that's the thing that's also beautiful is that we're not, but it's also upsetting to a lot of other people. We're not dealing with quote unquote racial undertones anymore. People are directly dealing with racial issues within these TV shows and movies. So there's a segment of they call it male white straight population that
check.
yes, there's a segment of that population that looks at those things and become angry.
Angry about what?
They're angry because they say, hey, just like with Colin Kaepernick, I go to a football game to watch football. This is my escape. Why are you bringing your politics? And say, well, hey, I watch these Marvel movies or TV shows or whatever to have entertainment. Why are you dipping your racism in here? Why are you bringing your politics here? And it's because, well, this is the world. And yes, it's a fantasy, but it's a fantasy within our real world. And that tend to stay consistent to our real world. So when that's taking place, so when that's taking place, we're going to look at these things. And also, these are major corporations and companies who are
spending millions,
hundreds of millions of dollars to make even more money, but they recognized that it is financially beneficial and morally beneficial to have these conversations. It's going to spark debate and argument, so therefore there's going to be financially beneficial because people got to watch it to argue about it, but also they're driving home the points of like, yeah, this racism thing kind of needs to end. And so let's talk about this. Let's show black perspective. If we weren't willing to even show black people at one point in this country,
right?
Well, if we're going to start showing them, let's at least show their viewpoints, and they're putting black people in the roles as well to show those viewpoints and hiring black writers and producers and that's the thing that made Black Panther as big as it was, because it's not just hey Chadwick Boseman is here and he's a black guy in his role. No, it was a black ensemble of people who were already considered legendary. It's not only the face of Chadwick Boseman in the forefront. Like I said, he was already a fantastic actor. He had played Thurgood Marshall, Jackie Robinson, James Brown. He had already played these iconic figures and characters to a T, magnificently, prior to doing Black Panther, or at least Black Panther coming out. And so we already recognized that. But like I said, it was the whole ensemble of legendary, iconic actors, as Forest Whitaker in there as well. Like you have these people. I forget the brother's name just now. It was Daniel Kume, I believe it is, who just won. He just won an Oscar. Mm-hmm. But on top of just the actors, though, this was directed by Ryan Coogler, who also gave us Creed, and Fruitvale Station.
I watched Creed.
Yeah, he gave us Creed, and I believe Fruitvale Station as well, which was about a black man who had got shot by the police in Oakland, where they also thought they pulled that taser but pulled a gun and shot. And like I said, they brought Ryan Coogler also did that movie, and with him doing the movie and bringing his team in, you're getting a cultural experience from the culture, and putting the money into that. That was what made that big. It was one of the first times that kind of money was being put into something
all black ensemble people with an African theme and a superhero. I get why meant, it had the international draw that it did.
Yes.
You hit on a point earlier though. I gotta say what my mind's been working because I don't feel like I'm inputting a lot because I don't know a lot about. I'm not up on all the current shows, movies, whatever. Yeah. But when you said that about bringing awareness into the Marvel movies and TV shows where they're actually talking about racial undertones, maybe not the undertones, but the larger topic, and you brought up Kaepernick as an example.
Yes.
It's interesting to me, just being real, Kaepernick stirs a reaction within me.
Yeah.
And the concept of bringing a racial discussion into a Marvel movie or whatever doesn't have the same reaction for me. And I think mostly because of the way that Kaepernick did his protesting, kneeling during the national anthem, which we've established, the patriotic component of how I feel, completely muddied the message that he had. And I know what the point you were trying to make is don't bring politics or racial issues into my football game or my baseball game or my NBA.
Well, that's how people feel.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that last week too. And essentially going forward and saying, don't bring that into my movies. I didn't have the same reaction. It's interesting to me. In the movie, if I don't want to watch it, then I don't have to watch it.
Yeah.
But
it's the same thing for the sports as well.
Well, I didn't watch the NFL for a while.
Yeah.
And I missed football, and I think the NFL got their head around that this was probably bad, so they cut kind of right to football. Now, I will say I've invested more in college sports now than the NFL, but it's an interesting correlation because, maybe I'm not that normal person, old white guy in that instance, because that doesn't bother me. If in a movie they're going to make, you're right, it's a discussion that should be had, we're having it. It doesn't seem to bother me as much as it does when the NFL or the NBA, even NASCAR to a point, is doing it now, bringing a racial discussion. Now, I think NASCAR is doing it in a better way than some of the other sports, and that might be because of prejudice. I like NASCAR, but prejudice to NASCAR, not prejudice. But it didn't. When you said that about movies, that didn't bother me. I don't know. Well, I don't have an issue with that.
I think that's more so speaking to how you enjoy your leisure versus.
Right, I'll watch 4 hours of NASCAR.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I think that it's about the movies wouldn't be your go-to. Right. So because they're not your go-to, it's not like they're quote unquote infringing upon something.
But like Denzel Washington,
I think that's the problem.
Well, Denzel Washington is one of my favorite actors. I love his movies.
Well, people can love black actors and love what they provide as far as entertainment, but still not want to hear their opinions or their message.
I'll bring up something that you said last week, which was about people, actors, celebrities, when they post on social media.
The influence that they have, yes.
Right, and you're like, well, you're an actor or you're a player. I don't care about your opinion. So where's that issue? Where's that line? Do these actors who are in movies that are about civil rights or about, even if they're not, they have an opinion, should they be putting that on blast and be criticized for doing that? Same with Kobe or LeBron or any of those people, whatever we were talking about last week.
LeBron. It's a great question. I don't have an issue with a movie that brings up racial challenges. Mm-hmm. Okay? I don't. If the movie's written that way and it's intended to spark discussion, then let it be that way. Where I take issue is, if let me put it another way. If LeBron James could not play basketball like he does, would he have the influence that he does on so many people? Give me a country music singer.
You're looking at the wrong guy.
I don't know anything. I got a white guy that sings music, okay?
Who sings Achy Breaky Heart?
Blake Shelton, okay. I don't know who that is, but okay. I don't listen to country music. Classic rock and roll, if it wasn't made in the 60s or 70s, it's not rock and roll. I'll take Elton and some other music. But is his opinion, because he's a good country music singer, important enough to influence so many people if it's done like we talked about with LeBron? I know that his intent in that one tweet with the picture of the officer and so forth was maybe misunderstood and it got twisted, and you can say whoever did that, I don't really care. But if it wasn't LeBron James, would anybody have paid attention to it? And that's where I don't know. That's why, like, when we do this, I try to be really careful about what I'm saying. I mean, I'm trying to be genuine and honest, but do it in a forum where we can dive deep and not just make blanket statements that, like, some people would and say, those athletes just need to play football. That's what they're there for. They need to shut up. I'm not going to say that, But I don't think you should kneel at the national anthem because I think that hurts more people for other reasons than your intended one. And LeBron, speaking out, I know he wanted to start a conversation, you were saying, or maybe he's the next one to go to jail, the officer. Would he have the influence if he didn't play basketball? So I don't know. To answer your question, Elliot, I don't know how I feel about that. I think, what's the difference in LeBron saying something and a politician saying something? Now, a politician has to be elected, so a majority of people, wherever they're from, put them in that position to be a voice for those people. I think that gives them some credibility. They have the right to say it. And I'll agree, LeBron has the right to say whatever he wants. And I'll defend to the death his right to say it. I don't mean I have to agree with it. Right? And now a politician who's been elected to a position by a body of people becomes a voice for those people, where LeBron didn't get elected, or Blake Shelton didn't get elected. They sung a good song, or they had good marketing, or played basketball really well, or played football really well. I get a little squirrely with that because I think I reflect a lot of people when I say I really don't care. Not that I don't really care. I do care about every individual's position if I had the opportunity to talk to them like I talk to you. Mm-hmm. But because you have a megaphone that reaches everyone, and particularly young people and young people of color in LeBron's case, or young white people and maybe Blake Shelton's, I don't know, and you're making a divisive statement or something that is perceived to be divisive, then I kind of get, why are you doing that? Same with Colin Kaepernick. Why are you doing that? I mean, I said this last time, go to the communities, meet with the people, show the support, because from the outside looking in, it looks like pontificating, it looks like showboating, it looks like, you're just, look at me, I'm going to raise hell about X. And I'm not articulating
it's not X. It's black people, unarmed black people being gunned down by police officers. And then also you have to, I think the issue with both sides of that, or both sides, whether you're talking about LeBron James or Colin Kaepernick, it's the lens for which you view it through. The lens that presents it on one side is going to show him on his soapbox saying what he's saying, this and a third. But then there's also another lens that shows him out in the community talking to the people, donating his entire NFL check to this problem that he's trying to solve of black people being shot in the streets.
See, I never heard that about Colin Kaepernick.
And I'm sure because of the lens.
I would challenge
that's why
that he donated his entire check, NFL.
You could challenge it and you would.
I'll have to look that one up. I'm not sure.
you can challenge it.
Well, Nike paid him a whole lot. Did he give that to?
No, he gave his NFL check. When you have multiple sources of income, you can donate one check and still live off another. Okay. And so,
if Nike paid me $25 million, and
for being famous, right?
Well, the NFL had to pay him around $20 million. When it was all said and done, the settlement was around $20 million. But either way it go, the whole thing is that, like I said, once there's the lens that you're seeing it through is the media, and depending on which media you watch, is who's showing what. And so
I don't know that any of the media showed Kaepernick in a really good light.
No, they did. I've seen it.
Well, I try to be diverse in what I watch.
With Kaepernick, we're talking about someone who, during his career, even if he's sitting on a bench, he was still looking at making $16 million the next year if he opted in. He opted out.
Right.
But it's not like he didn't have anything at risk when he was doing these things. And when you realize that, like, he still stood on this soapbox per se, which he didn't. He took a knee, and for it to become the issue that it became, it was strictly media influenced. Like, he never went to anyone and said, "Hey, I want to speak on this."
Why?
He wanted to take knee in reverence to the people who had been lost.
So there's a lot of people who would argue against that, though, that he did that to be self-serving. His time was done in the NFL.
No, it wasn't done. done. He was still in the NFL when it started.
Right, but
So you
his
can't say it
time
was
as a
done.
starter was done. He was not the guy that he wasn't the player that he was, and some argue.
But that's all opinion.
And people before the knee happened had made that decision.
So he had been benched on that team. Yes.
Yeah.
He had been benched on that team, but he had been benched before and brought back as the starter.
Okay.
So, and it was Blaine Gabbert, who's not even in the league now.
Okay.
So the idea that he may have been done as a quote unquote starter, I give you that. That doesn't mean he was done making millions and millions of dollars. Like he was still a quarterback in the NFL. Even on the bench, you're going to bring home $7-8 million a year.
I understand that.
So it wasn't like his earning potential was done.
Right, but isn't there a point though? Like, I mean, if I worked for Microsoft, okay, and I came out and was advocating vehemently for a challenging civil rights matter, whichever side I was on, right, and I was doing it in a way that affected, did I say Microsoft?
Yeah.
Microsoft's viewership, income, whatever, but I was doing it in that way. Now, would I expect Microsoft, even though I could do my job and still do it fairly well, but I'm affecting the company, would I expect them to employ me?
If you're affecting the company.
Which it did, because it affected
That's
viewership, it affected a lot.
The NFL never said any of that. There was this perception that was put out there that it was
The
affecting
viewership was down, dude. The sponsors.
You know what's funny about that? The viewership is still going down from that point. And you know why? Because the internet viewership is going up.
Okay, well, that may be a part of it.
So there's a lot of people shifting
then.
from cable and analog, regular TV viewing to viewing things over the internet.
But that
those
wasn't
numbers.
the case then.
Well, it's
So
it's
there
not-
was the
it-
case
it- so at that point we're getting to statistics and
Yeah.
whatever stuff that we don't have in front of us right now. But I did find it interesting to talk about the narrative. You start seeing Colin Kaepernick's decision to do that, and you see the strategy possible that he was thinking of. Was his career over or whatever? And how relevant is that to the result? I mean, did you think that he had any coaching? Why was this the action that he decided to take? As opposed to doing what you're suggesting about maybe having a press conference, starting fundraisers, the other stuff that we would more commonly assume with these kinds of things.
Because he didn't want to be a distraction. That's why he did what he did. He was sitting on the bench at first.
Mm-hmm.
He was sitting down at first, and his teammate, who was ex-military, told him to take a knee. That is more respectful, which, I mean, it is. We see soldiers take knees for their fallen brothers all the time. And
Not during the national anthem.
You never seen a person take a knee during the national anthem?
Not before Colin Kaepernick.
Okay. When in the history of the world has being on one knee been disrespectful?
I know
outside of Colin Kaepernick.
I understand what you're talking about.
Whether you're kneeling before a queen,
Okay.
whether you're kneeling to propose, whether you're kneeling in the NFL,
So
they would take a knee.
Are you going to tell me that Colin Kaepernick
in the NFL? Hold on, in the NFL, they would take a knee during the game to say that we're not trying to advance on you.
Right, injury or whatever. Right, or
So to end the game, right as we're ending the game, we'll take a knee. Or if I get the football and you're coming to tackle me, I can take a knee.
Right.
To say, hey, I'm not trying to cause any harm. I'm not trying to go any further. I'm stopping right here.
Now you're going to try to convince me that was his goal when he took a knee?
Yes.
No.
He listened to his teammate.
Well,
it's documented. He listened to his teammate.
Colin Kaepernick.
He didn't want to be a distraction. And once he took
became
the
a
knee,
distraction.
that's what made it though. Once he started taking the knee,
but you understand
the
how
news
many
came
people
to him and asked him why was he taking the knee, and he told them his reasoning.
You understand how many people in this country, though, have served our country, had relatives who served, people have died. Mm-hmm. Do you know how disrespectful that came across?
It never was disrespectful until he did it. Until a black man did it.
No.
For the cause of black people. No one had ever considered taking a knee disrespectful prior to that. And you give me one example in U.S. history, in the world history, where somebody got on one knee and somebody else said it was disrespectful. There were kings who would conquer town and make you bow to them.
Tim Tebow took a knee in the end zone to honor God and his faith and was just about laughed out of the NFL.
How is that disrespectful? Who was he disrespecting?
Well, apparently, even with the Broncos, who he won more games than the quarterback that was there, apparently it was enough disrespect to Elway, the president or whatever of the Broncos, that he kicked him loose. That none of the teams, nobody wanted that image of a person of faith taking a knee in the end zone. So there's an argument right there. And that's a white guy taking a knee for faith.
No, not at all. There were people. No. There were people talking about him, about his faith. It wasn't about him taking a quote unquote knee. That was about his faith and him demonstrating his faith.
But it took a knee to do it.
So
yeah,
I pose the question here. So let's remove the reasoning from it. What does it look like when someone it doesn't matter why they did it, someone takes a knee during the national anthem, scoring a touchdown, what would you do in place of that wouldn't be disrespectful, that wouldn't have gotten you laughed out of the NFL or kicked off of your team in order to say what you're trying to say visually?
I don't think that there was anything wrong with what he did. So
I have a memory from way back now. Wheeler High School in Marietta here, and it was in a paper. Back then they had things called newspapers. You may or may not know about this. Elliot.
Oh yeah, they come on your phone and you get
No. It was a folded piece of paper, or whatever. But it was one of the headlines, and it was at Walton. It wasn't at Wheeler. I want to say it was at Walton, but it was a big deal, and they took a picture of it, and it was in the AJC. That one of the band members didn't bow their head during the prayer before a game, and this was like the origin of a lot of that pregame prayer kind of stuff. And all he did, he stood there with his bandmates, but he kept his head up. He didn't bow his head, and that was an issue. And he felt like he had a right as an agnostic or for whatever reason, he felt like he didn't have to do that. That is the absence of a gesture. Not like, I'm not asking Colin Kaepernick to put his hand over his heart like most people do during the national anthem or take your hat off. I mean, but
or dance like our president did at the time, Trump.
Dance?
Yeah, he was dancing and orchestrating the band while they were doing the national anthem.
What's wrong with that?
Like you said, there's nothing wrong with it. Do whatever you want to do.
Well, I didn't say whatever you want to do.
Well, there's nothing.
I think if you just stood there, I just felt like what created. I mean, if it wasn't a big deal, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? It wouldn't be a big deal, and you feel like you have to argue really hard for him. And I'm not arguing against him because I said this before. I mean, Colin Kaepernick is not high on the list of people that I genuinely care. I mean, what he thinks until I get to know him. And if he turned out that he was like you and we could have a great conversation, then I might have a totally different opinion about the guy. But it became such a big deal because so many people interpreted that as just downright disrespectful. And then when he wears socks that say pigs and, in reference to law enforcement, I mean, I just feel like that was an intentional move to be disrespectful, not only to law enforcement, but our military. I mean, if you say that was his intent, I don't know him. I don't know. I just know that it was received poorly by so many people, and me too. I just thought that was kind of a crappy way to do what he was going to do. And I think, honestly, if you asked 100 people, you'd probably get 80 people, including some black people, that would say that was probably not the best way to do what he was trying to do. That's just my point. I'm not going to argue the reasoning.
Could you argue for how he should have protested? Because just standing there isn't.
Well, I don't think you protest during the national anthem at a game when you're played to represent your team, and that's what they put you there for. That I think is fundamentally part of the problem, is that you're playing on a team and they're paying you a lot of money to go out and represent your team, and then you take a political or a social stance that creates all of this chaos that we're still talking about. How long ago is all that now? Huh?
Probably 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years now? I mean, There are many things he could have done. He could have held a press conference. He could have said, you know what, I want to coordinate with leaders in, X, Y, and Z cities. And then it gets muddled because now Nike's paying him, $25 million to be a face of discord or challenging. That just screws it all up.
To be clear, he already had a deal with Nike. What happened was that they renewed their deal.
Right, and they changed their marketing part of it. It was a smart move by Nike.
Yeah, that was Nike. That was Nike doing what they do.
They made money. I'm not arguing
with that. So, but for me in that, when I recognize, okay, there's nothing wrong with taking a knee. And
that's your opinion.
That's not an opinion. Like, taking a knee was demonized.
During the national anthem.
Prior to that, the only time, even since then, the only time that taking a knee has been offensive to anybody is based in when he took it, which was during the national anthem.
But the same argument, Tim Tebow, they said that was wrong because he was showing his Christian values.
Yeah, that was people attacking him for his faith.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with. I believe we're in America. It's supposed to be freedom of religion here.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be freedom of speech here.
Yeah.
His freedom of speech supposed to stop because it's the national anthem.
And that's a good argument. I'm just. I can only tell you how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to convince me that I feel differently about it. I do believe that there are things that he could have done that would have been more positively impactful than the result of what came out of it.
Let me speak to why this is so important to me. The reason this is so important to me is that when people became offended at a gesture that they'd never been offended at before, then I say, why are they offended by it? And I believe that the only reason people were offended by that gesture is because he was saying, hey, it's not okay to shoot black people, unarmed black people. And it was a black man saying it's not okay to shoot unarmed black people.
That's not why I was offended at all.
Hold on. That's why I believe the masses. And in your argument, we were referring to the masses, the people who were upset about it. That may not be why everybody was. But when I get to that point, what I'm looking at is just racism. I'm looking at people who don't think it's okay for black people to have a stance, to have questions, to have an opinion, to have speech, and who do think it's okay for black people to be gunned down by police officers.
That's not what I'm saying.
I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. That's why I said, let me get to why this is important to me as me and you have this discussion so you can see where I'm coming from.
I'll tell you that. Right.
So the reason I would argue hard for this is because if people are able to see that he wasn't trying to offend people with this act, then they can see why people would want to make it seem as if he was. Thus people wouldn't be attacking the point. The people and media took the point from which he had, which was it's not okay to gun down unarmed black people.
Right.
They completely pushed that to the side and made it about a knee. And that's inconceivable to me. He wasn't able to make his point. He was being silent beforehand. He wasn't saying anything. He was sitting down, and when his military teammate, when that veteran came over to him, and he said to him, "Hey, sitting down right now while the pledge is taking place. The national anthem is taking place. That's disrespectful. You should at least take a knee." And Colin compromised and agreed. And then we demonize and vilify him for that. I'm not even talking about the man, because honestly, the man himself, like you said, he did the socks, and he said some other stuff, the Fidel Castro shirt. He did a lot of stupid stuff.
That kills the message.
So
makes it hard.
But I also understand that his message, he understood the point that needed to be brought up. He wasn't fully educated on how to deal with these things or how to go about it.
That was what I said.
He shared a message though, because like I said, I also know who his fiance was. She had her viewpoints as well, and it's almost like she was educating him.
Yeah, I heard
and
that.
And so he didn't have everything together like he should have, and he did some things that I completely disagree with.
Which is my point.
It's very easy to misconstrue.
Yeah.
But to me, him taking a knee That shouldn't have been nothing to misconstrue.
Well, okay. I mean, if that's going to be...
We kneel before God, man.
Yeah, we do.
Like, we kneel to pray.
Yeah,
and to me, and believe it or not, if you are a Christian, you got to hold that in higher commitment to Him than you do to the flag.
I do.
To the national anthem. So if we'll kneel to God, a higher power, what's wrong with kneeling? Like, that gesture in itself just isn't offensive. It's only offensive when people decided that it was.
Okay. Tillman, I mean,
So
I hear
that's
you.
that's why I
hear
want
you.
people to make
Okay,
that
well,
connection.
that's your point.
And
But no, wait a minute, no. I mean, you can say it 50 times and it doesn't change the point that he screwed it up. I mean, we would not be having this discussion right now if Kaepernick had done everything that you were saying with such, he was so, mindful and understanding, and he was trying to do great things. He screwed it up, and it was horribly done. And you're right, the media probably played a big part of that. But his attitude, his everything, and you can say 100 times over and over again that his intent was to bring awareness. All he brought was division. And you can blame that on whoever. I'm open. You know that I'm open.
Division he didn't bring division. He brought awareness. Awareness did take place, and division came to his doorstep. People came to him, and there were people walking around with dolls of him in a noose. Like, division came to his doorstep. Like I said, division is already here. We're in America. Division is already here.
Well,
and when somebody says something about the division,
let's not make it worse.
It makes it worse when we say something about it, when we speak on it.
When you do it wrongly, yeah. I think.
How is it wrong? How is it wrong to speak on what's wrong? How can you be wrong in that?
The same way that it would be wrong for me to say we have a Black History Month, February. Why don't we have a White History Month?
The other 11 months.
That's always the answer. That's always the answer.
That's the truth.
I don't know that that's the truth.
There was a time there wasn't a Black History Month. When Black History wasn't taught in this country.
I'm just picking a random
You see what I'm saying? But
I'm just picking a random thing
that
is culturally inappropriate to say, that is a stupid thing to say, and it fully makes sense why we designated a period.
And it's not, but understanding that
it
wasn't me attacking.
Insightful.
It wasn't me attacking the ideal of a White History Month. It was me acknowledging that we already study white history 11 months out of the year. It was already saying that we had 11
had a white
times
history class.
You had U.S. history. You
Yeah.
had world history. You're taught white in America.
Yeah.
So you're taught white history.
Well, there were black people in there too.
During Black History Month.
No. Before there was the Black History Month, there were black people in there. They weren't all slaves either.
Ooh.
Thurgood Marshall, Booker T. Washington. I mean, there's a bunch.
So they taught y'all about that regularly?
Yes. Anybody who's educated.
Right. I mean, beyond mentioning the name, because the reason I ask it is because, I homeschool my kids.
Right.
And in homeschooling my kids, and we go, of course, we're doing U.S. history right now.
Right.
And in U.S. history, they mentioned Marcus Garvey. And I was like, wow, okay, we got Marcus Garvey coming up in this next lesson. And normally when they say Abe Lincoln, or they talk about the leaders of the Confederate or whatever, it goes on, it's a chapter.
It was a paragraph.
It was a sentence, man. A sentence.
Now,
well, I didn't write
so that's the difference in teaching. Like, they didn't even tell the kids that wasn't in America. He was in Jamaica. He's from Jamaica. They don't even get into that. You know what I mean? At all. Like, where he's really from.
Well, I think what we're hitting on here is a really good, deep discussion on a lot of levels. Because I know that this goes back to the thing, the point that I was making last week, and I think you understand. I'm not a racist. I'm not. I don't view things racially. I think you know that.
Yeah.
But there are things that I'm kind of passionate about. And again, you didn't hear me say anything about Kaepernick's skin color or even what he was protesting for. It was the nature of his protest, and what it created was, we don't need to give you agree that we're kind of towards the middle. We're trying to figure out the line so that we can have a discussion, right? And within both our races, there are extremes, right? Now you could do a bell curve and put most people kind of in the moderate section, I guess. But even on the far side of those moderate sections, what we don't want to do is give them reasons to create more havoc. which is why we're doing what we're doing, and I know you said not to bring this up, was to have an articulate discussion about it, right? So that we're not hyperbole, it's not hyperbolic, and I'm going to do this. I mean, I think if you asked 100 people, 80 people, many black, would say that the way that he went about doing what he did, Kaepernick, was wrong. Now, I didn't challenge the fact that we needed to bring attention to some of the issues that we continue to talk about, and that's unarmed black men being shot by a police officer. I would say unarmed people being shot by police officers, but if we're going to focus on that one portion, then we can. Less than lethal options, some reforms in policing that address that, absolutely. But he could have done it 100 other ways than the way he did it, and it create the chaos that it does. I feel what you're saying, and that this was what he was saying, and he was bringing to light something. How can that be wrong if he's bringing truth to light? You can bring truth to light in a way that is inflammatory and wrong, and what you end up doing is the people that you most want to draw into the discussion, you push them further away. And I think that's what happened with Kaepernick. Now, it hasn't been until lately where more and more events bring the reality closer that we're getting more and more discussions because it's presented with more articulately in a way that people have to say, okay, we need to look at this. But you can make an argument, even if it's the right argument, in such a way that you piss everybody off and they don't want to come to the table. And I feel like that's what Kaepernick did. I'm not imputing the intent, what he meant, what he was talking about, the need for it. The same with LeBron. I'm not condemning the man. I'm not even condemning necessarily the words. It's the way that you do it can screw up the goal. And I would think from the African American community, black community, you would want a better voice to represent you, because if somebody's coming out and saying something that pisses a lot of people off, and I don't want to give it a percentage, but moves people further away from the discussion of equality and dealing with the systemic issues, that would infuriate me. I'd be like, man, shut your mouth. That's not what we're trying to do. Take the goofiest white guy, or take last president. Everything he said, everybody said was racist. Sometimes I wanted him to shut up. You're making it harder for people to have these discussions. And I think in the end, that's what you're getting, is you get a voice like Kaepernick or LeBron or Trump on some points, and you're making it harder to have the discussion. Because then we get lost in our emotions about that one moment. Because I can tell this matters to you, you can tell it matters to me, but we're missing the whole point of what it matters about.
Yeah,
because at the knee part, you're focused on.
That's why I keep pointing to. Well, see, that's the thing that you're saying is wrong, though. And like I said, that directly correlates to everything that happens.
I've never said to you what you're saying is wrong.
No, I said that's what you're saying is wrong. It's the knee. It's him taking a knee.
That is
you're saying that him taking
the national anthem and the people that have fought for this.
And that's where we'll have a massive disagreement, and that's also what makes me passionate about it. Because I just can't understand how it's only wrong during that moment in time. The only time where it's wrong to get on your knees. It's okay to get on your knees for God. Right. It's okay to get on knees to propose to your fiance. It's okay to get on your knees for a queen.
Let me frame it another way. Let me frame it another way.
But during the national anthem,
if he'd have come out and said during the national anthem, he's taking a knee for the fallen soldiers and the people who have died for our country and so forth, then I don't think he would have had the outlashes that he had. But because he came out and said, I am protesting cops, which is the way it got portrayed.
Okay. Right? That's how it's portrayed.
I think I understand that. I don't think he intended everything to happen. Yeah. I give the man, I don't think he intended all that. But because you're taking a knee to protest law enforcement, for whatever reason, yeah, I got a problem with that. I do, and I'm sorry. And maybe that's
for whatever reason on it. That's taking away the reason. Like I said, the reason is for
right. His behavior distracted from the argument that needed to be had, the discussion that needed to be had. His behavior took away from it, and I think everybody would agree with that. Is that we're talking about the knee, and we're not talking about the content of what he was trying.
We're talking about what's right and what's wrong. I don't think the minutia should matter. Whatsoever. Like you're talking about losing those people, I don't believe we could have had those people anyway because they're caught up in the minutia. And if people are caught up in the minutia of things, then there's no way. Like, nah, I don't expect to have you.
It's not.
What matters was the purpose that he did it. And if you don't care about that purpose already, it's very easy to attack everything else he did wrong and point to this is the
know
reason
that
why.
I care about it.
For someone
and I'm
to say,
telling you, it bothered me.
But like you said, there was a great group of people who had issue with it. So when you're
Maybe
talking about
more
this
extreme than mine, but
yeah.
I mean,
So when you're talking about this great group of people, yeah, I can talk to you and I can say, okay, I know that you don't feel that way.
right.
But there's a lot of people who in that group that also feel like cops should kill niggas.
Well, I don't know.
Feel that way.
There are people
who felt that way, who showed that, who stated that, who wanted to kill Cap. So
I can't
yeah,
argue.
I'm like I can't. Like I'm going to be passionate about that because it directly leads to those things for me. Because I see it. I see the line there. I see where people decided like, nah, it's okay. Like you said, if he was kneeling for the passing of soldiers,
Right.
brothers in arms,
Yes.
it's okay.
Black or white.
But if he's kneeling for brothers unarmed, it's not.
But that is not how it was portrayed. And I don't think he did a lot to help clarify it. When he takes it further and he's wearing the socks with pigs on it and the comments that he made. I mean, I hear what you're trying to say, and I agree with you. The discussion needed to be had, but I think he became a bullhorn that I really believe most people feel like he took the wrong approach to it. And now, you also make a really good point that there are some people that won't listen to the discussion because they just feel the way they feel. That's fair. And I think that's probably true on both sides, like we're talking about. But I just have a feeling about him and the way he did that, and then it permeated and it created an environment that was divisive. I really do. I mean, what about the player beside him who didn't want to kneel, who may be very aware of the social issue and wants to talk about it, but he respects the flag and the country enough, he's not going to do that. I mean, there was all those dynamics going on, and I hear you. I can get, you can bring me closer to the discussion, but I'm not going to be a Kaepernick fan. I'm just
No. I'm not. Like I said, I'm not a fan of it.
Okay.
So I'm not a fan of
I just
Kaepernick,
can't get there.
but I care about black
issue.
people.
No,
I care
I-
about black lives. And so even like
I
I
care
said,
about
so
all lives.
and that's why I said for me it's just what made me passionate about this specific conversation is I wanted you to be able to see that we have to look over the missteps, what was wrong that he did. We don't have to glorify him. We don't have to say he was great at any of that stuff because he wasn't. He's not MLK. He's not even Malcolm X. He's not these things. But he did make a sacrifice. He definitely sacrificed any money he might have had coming from the NFL. But he did that to bring awareness, and it did bring awareness, and it did change some things. We're still having the effects of that today. There's still people taking knees, the NBA doing what they did. All that still sprouted from the things that he did. So,